Welcome to Cyclones FeverCast, the only webcast dedicated to the Brooklyn Cyclones of the New York Penn League and an affiliate of the New York Mets. Join me each week for a weekly recap and perspective on Brooklyn Cyclone baseball. This is an independent webcast not affiliated with MILB or the Brooklyn Cyclones. And hello and welcome to episode 14 of Cyclones FeverCast, and this will be the final Cyclones FeverCast of the season. We'll be back next year, God willing, with another season of Cyclones FeverCast with hopefully bigger and better guests and just more things to talk about in the Brooklyn Cyclones baseball world. But for this season, we're going to call it quits for after 14 episodes, and as I say, be back maybe a little earlier next year. We'll see. Maybe we'll start in May or whatever whatever it warrants. So I thought I'd like to have a guest for the final episode, and I think I've got a very special guest on tonight, and we're going to talk to him in just a moment when he calls in. But until then, let's take a quick little break and be back after this message.
Hi, this is the world-famous Mr. Brewtown of BrewtownSports.podomatic.com. You know, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Brewtown Sports. You can also listen to the show at Stitcher.com, TuneIn.com, and iTunes.com. And we've got the new one. It's called BrewtownRadio.weebly.com. But the one that I'm most proud of being on is BaseballPodcast.net. It is the home of great baseball talk shows. Check it out, my show and all kinds of other programs all about Major League Baseball. So check it out. That's BaseballPodcast.net, the home for great baseball talk shows.
Are you a fan of the NBA and Major League Baseball? Would you like a sports show dedicated primarily to just that? Plus, we throw in a little fantasy baseball and basketball just for good measure. Featuring credentialed sports journalists, the guys who sit on press row, we bring you the stories that you want to hear. To check us out, please visit us at philnasons.com or on Twitter at FlashTennis31.
Until they were literally ready to film the scenes, and Chad told the director that, he said, well, I played for a guy that really was a scout and actually scouted Billy Beane in the time frame of this movie context. And the director said, well, get him out here. Let's get him to do it. And I thought it would be fun to see how they make a movie. I only worked on it for 2 days, and the director, who was a non-sports guy, he just told me that, he said, look, we're not going to give you any lines. You're a baseball guy, just ad-lib it. So I was just being myself, and the few lines I had were just ad-libs.
Well, you did a great job, and as you say, you've been a baseball lifer, done it all, and you actually came out of retirement to manage the Cyclones, and how did that occur?
Yeah, I'm very grateful for Paul DePodesta, is vice president with the Mets and the director of player development and scouting, and Paul and I had worked together in the San Diego Padre organization, and I can honestly say that in the 2 years I was retired, I loved it, because my passion for golf is equal to my passion for baseball. And when Paul first talked to me about the idea of it, I really didn't think it was for me, because I was really content in retirement. Mm-hmm. And I said, why wouldn't you want to hire a younger guy that has a future that you could mold and train? And he gave me his reasons for wanting to have somebody with more experience with the players in Brooklyn. And, given a few days to think about it, I was kind of surprised that my internal excitement and adrenaline got going at the thought of competition again and coaching young players. And you know what? It was very fulfilling for me to be, to having been retired and financially solvent, to come back to baseball strictly and only for the right reasons of strictly to give something back and to work with the players and not looking for anything self-wise. I mean, I've managed at A and Double A and Triple A and coached in the big league, so I didn't have any desire to run that cycle again, just for what it was. And I had a great time. And the Mets were first class from day one till the end. And, how I got treated, how they treated their players, and that whole operation of the Brooklyn Cyclones, the front office, the fans, the ballpark, every team in the league wishes they could play all their games at MCU Park. That's how much it kind of reminds me of when I was coaching in the big leagues with the Cubs. There's certain parks that just have electricity that you can feel even during batting practice, and certainly that's the case at the Brooklyn Cyclones. So I'm indebted to Paul DePodesta for bringing me back out of retirement, and God willing, and if the Mets wanted me to do it again next year, I would certainly come back.
Well, you are a bit of a fan favorite in Brooklyn. The fans really enjoyed your leadership of the young team, and really enjoyed a different type of baseball that they had had in the last few years, and that was you played a little bit more aggressive and you ran more and bunted more, and you really did a good job yourself as being very accessible to the fans and to the media. And I know a lot of people were very pleased. And as I say, you're a bit of a fan favorite in Brooklyn.
Oh, well, that's the first I've heard of that, and I appreciate the compliments. The whole focus, it's all about the players, and we certainly had some very, very good ones. I commend the Mets scouts for some of the talent that they acquired, and I think it's going to be exciting in not too far down the road for people that saw the club play today to be able to say, hey, I saw these guys when they were at Brooklyn, when they're, in the starting lineup for the New York Mets over at Citi Field, because, we had literally four of, I think, the better and more exciting prospects in the whole league happened to be playing on our team this year.
I have to agree with you. And now that you've had a couple of weeks to reflect on the 2014 season, what are your thoughts on the whole season?
Well, on the overall, I'm still I still go to bed at night thinking of games that we could have or should have won, because it came down to literally one more game, and I was fearful the last month, seeing that Connecticut and us were in a battle. There was 8 days in a row where we both won or lost on the same day, because they stayed 2 games behind us. That never got to 1 or 3. It was always 2. And I kept trying to impress upon our team that we needed to keep that edge, because the rules of that league, a tie becomes a loss for us because of the fact that they beat us 4 out of 6. So I said we can never lose this edge. And unfortunately, when we lost 3 tough one-run games in a row at Tri-Cities and got swept while they were winning 2 of 3, they ended up catching us, which inevitably was like going by us, even though to the average fan it was tied. It really wasn't.
Right.
And I was really proud of our guys after those 3 tough defeats to come back and sweep the Yankees the last 2 games of the season. I think 11-3 at our place in our Fan Appreciation Day, and then the final day of the season, 3-1 over in Staten Island. But unfortunately, Connecticut they battled hard, and they won that final game 9-8 over Lowell, and that knocked us out of the playoffs. But I tried to focus, and I told the players on the bus how proud I was, and that they should be of themselves to win 2 must-win games against their rival, the Yankees, and so we did everything we could to get into the playoffs. But we got to give Connecticut credit, because they won their last 5 in a row to get there.
Yeah.
But it would have been nice to get to the playoffs, because we had such a good team at the end, and the camaraderie that we had, and with our pitching, I really think we would have had a real good chance to do the whole thing if we just could have got there.
Yeah.
We needed to get invited to the dance, and it didn't happen.
Well, you had a lot of adversity this season. You had a long losing streak earlier in the year, 8 games, I believe, 8 or 9 games.
Yep.
And then a little bit later, there was a 5-game losing streak, and yet you still were there at the end. And just that weekend massacre, and it wasn't really even a massacre, but just that weekend at Tri-City really put the nail in the coffin.
Oh, it sure did. And we got 3 outstanding pitching performances too. I mean, we lost 3-2, 4-3, and 3-2. I mean, 3 exciting one-run games, and in 2 of the 3, we had the tying and winning runs on in the 9th, and we couldn't get a hit to turn the game around.
Mm-hmm.
So it is what it is. But the effort was there, which is all a manager can ask for, and we did finish 42-34. So all the Mets minor league teams finished over 500 this year. So
mm-hmm.
That's a very credible thing. It's very difficult to do for the entire organization when all your teams finish on top. And the Binghamton team ended up going all the way and winning a championship. So that was nice. So there were a lot of, I got a lot of great memories from this season, and certainly a lot of the guys developed. And as a coach or manager, that's what you like to see as players. A perfect example that comes to mind is Casey Meister. I mean, this big, gangly, red-headed, freckle-faced kid. He reminded me a lot of a reliever we had when I was at Kansas City, Mike McDougall,
Mm-hmm.
that made the American League All-Star team one year. Casey's only a year out of high school, and to be competing at 19 in the NYP League, where a lot of the guys are 21 and 22, he immediately started off 0-3 and was trying to feel his way and just trying to compete. And yet, from mid-season on, he won his last 5 starts in a row. And the last 2 against the Yankees, and both of them in their park. And, as any baseball fan will tell you, to beat a team twice in 1 week, let alone at their own park, you just don't see that happen very often. Because usually, if you get them the first time, the players will find a way to adjust to what you're throwing, and they'll get you the second time. But, to Casey's credit, he shut him out on 7 innings in the first go-around, and he ended up giving up a run, and we beat him 3-1 on that final day of the season. So, to me, in a must-win game, that's a great sign of a guy who has big league ability, and he got better and better as the season went on. And certainly, he's ready to advance to a higher level come 2015.
And he did that especially against as you said, your hometown rival, and that's not something to shake your fist at. That's really an accomplishment to take care of business, and with all the pressure on him as well. And you had a very solid pitching staff throughout the year. Marcus Molina, a sterling player of the year with the Mets organization. He tied the New York Penn League in victories and was up in every category. What can you tell us about him?
Well, he from day one back in March in spring training and in extended spring training, it was just fun watching him, his work ethic, his ability, just the whole package. I mean, at 19 years old, he's probably going to be the first of the bunch of this group of pitchers to see time with the Mets. And I really see him being on a fast track to the big leagues, because he's every once in a while you come across a kid that's just different than the norm, and that's Marcus. I mean, to have 3 major league pitches at 19 and the command of them, that's what prompts me to think that he's on the fast track. Because generally you get guys like Casey Mizer, who we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Casey's got a major league fastball. He's got a very good changeup, but he's still he's got command of his fastball, but the command of his changeup is what got better during the season. At the beginning of the season, he only had 2 pitches. He was just learning a curveball, and it was a non-factor. It hurt him in his losses, because when he hung it, it usually got hit out of the ballpark or off the fence. And he didn't have very good command of it at all. And now you go to the other extreme. Here's Marcus Molina with a fastball, slider, and change, all major league caliber, and with the control to throw any of those 3 pitches on any count, including 3 and 2, and have the confidence that he's going to throw it for a strike. That's something that you don't see many big league pitchers doing, not with 3 pitches.
Right.
And consequently, as you mentioned, he tied for the league lead in wins, but he led the league in strikeouts. Mm-hmm. He was amongst the fewest walks per innings pitched, and he led the league in ERA at 1.71. So I mean, he dominated the league as a 19-year-old. You just don't see a teenager do that very often. So it's going to be fun for Met fans to watch his progress. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up in the pen when he first got to the big leagues, and then in time pitched his way into the rotation. But I see it happening fairly quickly for him.
Yeah, he had fantastic stuff, and he was fun to watch, of course, and just a joy. And of course, the left side of your infield was a pretty good combination there as well, with the Johan Urena and Ahmed Rosario.
Yeah, those 2 guys. I don't know who the scout was that signed him from the Mets. This just being my first year here, but that guy should be very proud of himself, because both of those 2 guys, they just have exceptional talent. And the managers in the league, what they were just shocked that these 2 kids were teenagers doing what they were doing. I mean, Rosario actually played the whole year at 18. He doesn't turn 19 until November.
Wow.
And Johan turned 20 the day after the season ended. And but you're looking at, Rosario is a guy that has hit second his whole life. He'll probably be hitting second when he's in the lineup in the big leagues, because he's very, very adept at the hit and run. He's got a very quick bat. Can make all the plays at shortstop. I mean, he's really fun to watch, and very, very athletic and capable of making the spectacular play. And Urena, you just don't see many guys like this come along. I mean, I've told people that he reminds me of Aramis Ramirez, but as a switch hitter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a physically very strong, stamina kid that is going to be able to, probably hit 4 or 5 in a major league lineup and be a 25 to 30 home run guy, drive in runs. And he's got some arm accuracies to work out. The people that were at every game sometimes maybe didn't feel safe in the box seats behind first base, because he's got a bazooka for an arm, but the majority of the errors that he made came on throws, and he'd be the first to tell you he's got some accuracy problems to work out, but he's got the hands and agility. The last time I saw a third baseman with his skills, when I was a coach at Kansas City and Eric Chavez came into the league, we all our coaches at Kansas City, we knew that he was going to be a Gold Glove winner because he just, and Urania's the same way. He just has the, I know Fonzie, Edgar Alfonso, who was a coach with us on our home games, Fonzie would look at me sometimes after Urania would make a play on a swinging bunt or a good bunt by a leadoff hitter. He would come in on the dead run, pick it up barehanded, and throw a laser to first base and get the guy by half a step. And Fonzie would look at me and say, "There's nobody in the big leagues that makes that play." So he really has some exceptional skills, and the two guys, Rosario and Urania, are best of friends. They're roommates, and I see them as a tag team kind of going through this system together. And there's going to come a day when they're going to be playing on the left side of the infield in New York, and I think the people are just going to love the manner in which they play, their personalities, and their skill set. Because we had as Brooklyn fans know, they had a great time watching those kids play this year.
And it seems like they have a great passion and a love for the game. Urania's always seemed to be smiling, and
Yep.
And yet they have also a great capacity to learn. I remember watching a game on SNY, and you were talking to Rosario and showing him you were coaching third, and I guess it was in between innings, or no, it was a pitching change. You were giving him some instruction, and that's good to see at that age and at that skill level that they still have that love of the game and the passion. And these two guys, I mean, you look through pictures with fans and everything, they're always smiling and happy to be there, and that's great.
Yep. Yeah, and they're both they both of them just reported to Instructional League yesterday down in Port St. Lucie, Florida. So they're right back at it again. And of course the fourth guy of this foursome, and certainly not last of the four, that is Michael Conforto. And boy, he it's not easy when you're a first-round pick and an early first-round pick at that, number 10 in the country.
Mm-hmm.
The self-imposed pressure that you put on yourself to live up to your billing, knowing that all the eyes, not only of your teammates, but the front office, the media, the fan base, everybody's looking at you to see if you're worthy of where you were taken. And I've over the years, I've seen some guys that couldn't handle that pressure. I've seen some guys that became very withdrawn because of the self-induced pressure. But boy, it's a real credit to Michael Conforto's parents, the way that he was raised, a very affable, gregarious personality that gets along with everybody. From day, he doesn't speak a word of Spanish, and he immediately hit it off with all the Latin players. Very poised, very relaxed, very confident in his skill set, and he had a tremendous first year. And although everybody knows that followed college baseball about his hitting prowess and all the comments made about what a great eye he had for the strike zone, all that was well and good. But he came not only through my college friends that I asked about him, what I read in Baseball America, even our own reports with the Mets, were every time that it was referenced about his defense or his throwing arm, it was always adequate was the term that was there. And I'm telling you, this guy was anything but that. He's got unbelievable pride in his whole game and in the team concept and in wanting to win and be a part of a winning team, and had no fear of walls, no fear for his body in terms of diving for balls, which he made 2 phenomenal diving catches in the first week that he joined the team. And in the short 6 weeks that he was with us, I think he finished up with 6 or 7 assists. And on 2 occasions, he threw out the tying or go-ahead run at the plate in the late innings. And ironically, when our season ended and he went to Savannah for the playoffs, in the very first playoff game at Savannah, he threw 2 guys out at home plate. So I think he's, as I told him, he sent a message right from his first day in pro ball to eliminate the words adequate from the defensive part of his game. And, and of course, being an older guy, a college guy, and with an advanced skill set, he's another guy like Molina I see being on a very fast track to New York. And, it's going to be interesting to follow his progress and see how soon he gets there.
Yeah, it certainly will be, and I could see him playing Double-A maybe next year, or starting in Advanced A and going to Double-A and end up the season maybe in Triple-A. Who knows? Depending upon if he goes to the big camp in spring training. But it is funny how he did have that knock on his defense, and yet, boy, when I went to games and saw him play, I thought he was pretty good, and I love the way he hits the all fields, and he's got pop in his bat. He just looked like a really good prospect.
Yeah, and he's such an honest kid too, Gary. I asked him once I saw him play a dozen games and saw how solid he was on defense. My curiosity got the best. I asked him point blank. I said, "Where did this rep come about you just being adequate with the arm and the glove?" And he said, "Well, I deserved it." He said when I came out, he was a shortstop in high school, unbeknownst to me, and he had never played outfield before. And he said when he went to Oregon State, they put him in left field, and he was very candid. He said, I ran bad routes and I dropped some balls. I just hadn't played out there before. And so he said the label was well deserved, except that through being on a USA college summer team that went to Japan and Cuba, and in his summer ball and his two succeeding years at Oregon State, he felt that he had worked hard enough on his defense and played good. But sometimes baseball is a funny game where when you get a label, it's hard to shake. It used to be back in the 50s, a scout would see a shortstop and say, well, he's good field and no hit.
Right.
And then it seemed like, people like when Larry Boa signed, that was kind of the tag on him. Well, by the time he became a big leaguer with the Phillies, he was never a power guy, but he actually hit 300 in the big league. So
right.
Larry Boa was living proof that a guy could change his label, but sometimes it can be hard to shake. And I think that's what happened to Conforto, is that it became easy for people to criticize him because as a freshman, he didn't play good in the outfield.
Boy, it's funny how that sticks with you. It's just unbelievable. Well, defense was a problem this year. I hate to say it, but the team did have some problem with the defense. Is that because of the youth and, at a young age, there could be a lack of focus at critical times, or what can you pinpoint on that, or give us an idea what causes that lack of defense?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, and very honestly, our team was we were either very good or very poor on defense, because we had a lot of games where we did not score. We were in the bottom three, I believe, in runs scored. So a lot of our 42 wins. In fact, we were the last team of the 14 in the league to have a 10-run game. In terms of our team scoring 10 runs, because most of our games seemed to be 3-2 and 4-3, whether we were on the on top or the bottom. But when we would make errors, they came in bunches. I mean, in the 13 or 14-year history of the Cyclones, their record for a game for errors was 5, and we accomplished that 3 times, and then topped it by having a 6-error game one night. So in the last 2 years, they had made 67 and 78 errors, and I believe we ended up with like 111. So yeah, there's no excuse. We made a ton of them. All I can tell you is that we worked at it every day, and that's one of the reasons why they call it rookie ball or short season A because the kids are not polished, and it's a growing and a learning experience for them. I think we had some real good athletes, but I know that when I was a kid, one of my idols was Vince Lombardi, and I remember he had a famous line that said, "Fatigue makes cowards of us all." And sometimes I think that for young players going through their first season of pro ball, playing 76 games in 80 days, the constant bus rides, the getting in from Vermont at 6:30 in the morning, and then having to play again that night at 7:00, that the fatigue to the body, you can become tired, and tiredness becomes laziness, where maybe you're not flexing your knees like you should to get low enough for that ground ball, and you miss a play that you would normally make. But I'm the first to admit there were certain nights where we were very ugly on defense and not fun to watch. And but like I say, we had our nights. We had streaks where we would play 5 or 6 errorless games in a row, and we did a real good job. So it went both ways, but it's certainly something that a lot of the guys have to get better at. They have to improve that, become more consistent.
And I didn't see as many games as you, obviously, but it seemed like there was a lot of more of throwing errors than necessarily just booting the ball. Am I close to that, or?
Well, with two guys, there's no question. I mean, Michael Bernal, I believe he led the league in assists. I mean, he's got a bazooka from right field, but by the same token, Michael's accuracy leaves a lot to be desired, and he had a ton of errors in the outfield, the majority of which were throwing errors. I mean, at times the ball going to the backstop and letting 2 trail runners advance an extra base. So, that was and as I mentioned, Urania was the other one, because I think Johan ended up with 17 errors, and the vast majority of those were on erratic throws to first base, never to second. He always was right on the money with his throws to second base, but to first base, there was a lot of hold your breath when he got cocked to throw. You just didn't know where it was going.
And the funny thing is, you said he's got a rifle for an arm, because a lot of the throws I think were high. They really weren't the type that were in the dirt or anything like that. They were just high and over the first baseman's head.
No, that's right. That's why I say sometimes the people had to be alert that were behind those box seats behind first base.
Well, now, Tom, is it? I know that you've been in the game and you enjoy teaching these kids, but is there ever? How can I word this? Is there any attention inside you about teaching versus winning? Let me just put it out that way. I'm not explaining myself properly, but you want to win for Brooklyn and the organization, and yet your job is really to teach these kids. Is there ever any kind of confrontation internally about that? I mean, you're a competitive guy. You've been in the game your whole life. It's all about competition. And how do you marry the two?
Well, that's a good question. But that's what the minor leagues is about. Is that every affiliate, rightfully so, wants to win, whether it's Brooklyn or Savannah or Port St. Lucie. That they want to win, they want to hang that banner, they want to get to the playoffs. There's more money to be made for the affiliate, the extra home dates. But the first and foremost nature is that it's player development, and in player development, then there are times when you have to sacrifice winning for player development, and I've been doing this so long that the two go hand in hand, and I worked for 11 different teams, and there's not one of them that when you're in position to win, I mean, when you get to the month of August and you have a chance to get there, then the organizations are fully behind you, and it's a credit for the organization to get to the playoffs too. So it really doesn't interfere when you get down the stretch. And I've always liked the challenge of blending the two. And as I alluded to with the Casey Meisner, there's a perfect example that Casey Meisner, if he was at Florida State or USC or Vanderbilt, one of these top-notch college programs, he's not going to be in their rotation as a freshman because they're trying to get to Omaha and win a College World Series. His skill set development wouldn't be far enough along to compete with the juniors and the seniors, so he'd be redshirting, or he'd be getting in innings in one-sided games. But in pro ball, the investment in Casey and the future potential of him warrants that he be starting, even though he might be costing us wins. I mean, when he lost his first three games, he was competing his tail off and doing the best he could, but it was kind of like on-the-job training against older guys, against a guy, pitching against guys like Conforto, that were signed by other teams that were 21, hitting against this 19-year-old kid, and he took his lumps. But there's no substitute for ability. And once ability gets meshed with experience, and Casey taking his lumps and having an ERA that at one time was close to 7, but we still ran him out there every 6 days in our 6-man rotation. Once those two meshed and he figured it out, how to get these people out, it was fun watching him win his last 5 starts in a row. And because then you're seeing the best of both of them. Here's a guy that we developed by giving him his innings and letting him take his lumps early, but boy, did it pay off in the end. And now next year, when he's ready to advance and be in the rotation in Savannah, hopefully he's going to keep taking his stepping stones, and someday he pitches it in New York. So I as a teacher and a coach, I love the challenge of trying to mesh the both of them, and then like I say, knowing that if you're in it in that final month, then you can play your games to win, which we did, and we had a very good month of August, even in spite of that 3-game losing streak at the end. We just had that, unfortunately, that right at the beginning of July when we lost 8 in a row. That's what we weren't able to overcome.
Mm-hmm. And is it more rewarding to see a guy like Meisner succeed or to grow during the course of a year rather than I don't mean rather than, but I think you know what I mean, like than a Conforto that he's a little bit older, he's a little bit more polished, and you have a certain expectation of what he's going to do. But with a Meisner, to see him make great strides, is that more rewarding as a teacher and a coach?
Well, they both are in different ways. With the Confortos, and especially with Michael signing so late, I did everything that I could as a manager to take the pressure off him that I knew from just years of experience that number one's put on themselves. I said, hey, you haven't played in a game in 2 months, so even though you've been working out, we both know it's not the same. You're not in playing shape, and your eye isn't in tune. Taking batting practice from a friend throwing to you is not the same as facing a guy that's throwing 92 with movement that's trying to get you out. So I said, just do me one favor, because I'm going to reciprocate, and that is these first 50 at-bats, think of these like your spring training. Even though they're games that count, for you got to give yourself 50 at-bats before you even, little did I know that he was going to go 2 for 4 his first 4 or 5 games in a row. I mean, so much for, he was hanging out line drives right from the first day, but you don't often see that with a guy that hasn't competed in 2 months. So I knew what his skill set was. I wanted to make sure I did what I could to take the pressure off of the early at-bats. In case he didn't get off to a good start, I didn't want him pressing. With Meisner, there's a different. It's a whole different thing of watching a guy that you know is basically going to struggle early on, because he's a youngster competing with older, more experienced guys. But then seeing the Mets' decision to send him there and his skill set all of a sudden start to rise and the development kick in, where, hey, now he's got command of 2 pitches. Now all of a sudden, he hung a curveball today for a 3-run homer, but he did get 2 strikeouts with it. You're starting to see the development of the 3rd pitch, and then the command of it, and then all of a sudden when it all came together, I mean, like I say, in Casey's last 3 or 4 outings, he was striking out like 9, 10, or 11 in each outing. You know, I mean, he was doing things that he didn't do last year in rookie ball. Mm-hmm. I want to say his high strikeout total in pro ball was like 5 or 6. And the first time he got 8 this year, that was a record for him. Well, by the end of the season, it was double figures.
Yeah.
You know, so it was fun to watch.
So it's always fascinating to me putting a team together every year, and especially on that level, because it's like a whole new team all the time. And so take us through that a little bit, if you don't mind. You're in extended spring training. Do you know which guys are filling out most of the roster up to that point, not counting the draft picks, of course? But are you working with guys that are gonna be Brooklyn Cyclones?
No.
Okay.
We had 92 players in extended spring training because the Mets have 3 rookie teams. So the Brooklyn being the highest, and then Kingsport being the next one down, and then the GCL Gulf Coast League team, right in Port St. Lucie, being the youngest of the 3. So 92 players, and basically we just used the Mets colors of blue, orange, and white, because we didn't want players to think, we didn't want them to be distracted by worrying about which team they was on.
Right.
So we just, Dickie Scott, our farm director, he just divided them all up equally and put them on the 3 teams. And then, you know, we had 3 coaching staffs manage each of the 3 teams, and I was kind of like the extended spring director. I mean, I kind of supervised all 3 of them and had my hands on all 3 teams, but not on any one particular. And then as I watched them play over the 2 months, April and May, I started to get an idea, just being my first year with the Mets, as I saw their skill set of the 92 players, I started to get ideas in my mind of who we might get in Brooklyn. But I did not know per se what our team was going to be until literally within about 5 days before we actually left to come to Brooklyn.
It's fascinating. And then you get to Brooklyn, and then you get more players from the draft, and you have to. Right. How do you meld them in and just work them in gently?
Well, yeah, we had 3 days. We arrived in Brooklyn on the 9th. We practiced the 10th, 11th, and 12th, and we had the except for Conforto, our scouts did a great job of getting the June drafted guys signed and with the team. So we had, like Brad Wick, Kelly Seacrest, and Jonathan Prevost. Those 3 guys were right there from the get-go. So we were able to kind of polish up the fundamentals in 3 days, get them blended into the team, and then really what you're trying to do is, as I told the players, we're basically going to use the month of June, to get everybody blended in. I mean, it takes a couple weeks to,
sure,
to see what the best lineup is going to be, and and how to use your bullpen, because the June drafted guys, other than seeing the report, you don't really know what they can do at that level until you throw them into the fire and see them compete. And we found out very quickly that, for example, Kelly Seacrest was fantastic as a setup man for us, and did a terrific job pitching the 8th inning of games that we were, up 2-1 or 3-2. So and then you got July and August then to compete for your pennant, as it were.
Well, it was certainly a tough job, and what a great job you did do. And I don't know how you feel about talking about it, but I guess one of the most famous things you're noted for is the incident that took place in Chicago 12 years ago. And I'm just wondering if you could take us through that a bit.
Yeah, that was it was certainly at the time an out of body experience in the sense that, we were in last and the White Sox were in the second to last. I mean, it was late. In fact, it was September 19th. Now that I think of it, so we're almost talking about it on the anniversary date. But it was late. It's late September. The game did not mean anything, and it was real cold in Chicago. So it just wasn't. I mean, you're just playing out the schedule. It's not like there was an intensity of a pennant race or anything. Mm-hmm. And it was the ninth inning of a game. And when I got attacked from behind, when I got knocked down, I guess I blacked out for a moment because it was an out-of-body experience in the sense that I remember laying on my back with two guys swinging at me, and I remember thinking in an instant, who are these guys? What are they doing on the field? And why are they swinging at me? And why can't I hear anything? Because one guy, I could tell he was yelling because I could see the veins in his neck were bulging, mm-hmm. and his mouth was moving, but nothing was coming out of his mouth. I didn't realize until well after the fact that I had momentarily lost all my hearing in the shock of my head getting rammed into the ground.
Wow.
And actually, when the dad, he was so out of it, they were swinging and missing me, but the dad actually then cold-cocked me with a closed fist right on the jaw, and that turned out to be a plus, because that's what actually woke me up, and I realized then that I was in trouble, and in an instant, I kicked the guy that was in front of me. I was trying to kick him to get him far enough away so I could turn and defend myself against the guy on my left that mm-hmm. just hit me in the jaw. And one of the papers had a picture of my leg fully extended, kicking the guy in the groin that was in front of me. But just as I turned to defend myself against the guy on my left, then I got hit again by a whole wave of people, and I was so out of it, I didn't know who they were until after the fact, realizing those were my teammates that were, piling up on these guys. Only I was at the bottom of that pile, and some of our guys that couldn't get in on the pile that were trying to kick those two guys. Well, I had welts on my legs and my groin that lasted for weeks of guys that were trying to kick the two guys, but I was at the bottom of that thing too. So it was a shame that the city of Chicago got a black eye because of the actions of the two crazy people. Because having been the third base coach for the Cubs, I know all too well about what a great sports town Chicago is, and didn't deserve to see it labeled, negatively because of the actions of two people. That was a shame. And then personally, it was a shame that I ended up losing a portion of my hearing in my right ear permanently, unfortunately, as a result of that. But other than that, everything's okay.
Well, that's good news, and it's, of course, it's good that you recovered fully, and you were in Brooklyn this year. So you stated earlier that you'd love to come back, and how does this work now? What do you sit on and wait until you get a phone call from them, or do they tell you that they'll make a decision by a certain date, or what's the procedure?
That's a good question, Gary. And baseball, most teams are pretty universal in that the baseball year goes from November 1 to October 31. And, that's the calendar year. And so it's basically I mean, I've already told them, I had such a great time doing it. If they wanted my experience to go ahead and do it again, that's fine. There will come a time, I think, that, and this is just me talking. Edgar Alfonso, who had a illustrious career with the Mets and lives in New York and has been raising a family. Edgar came back into baseball this year and worked with us in extended spring as a coach for the first time in pro ball. And as I mentioned, he was a coach with us for our home games. He didn't go on the road with us, but he did coach the home games, and he made one trip through the Met farm system. And I could see at some point with Edgar getting enough experience that he may want to manage, and being a well-known guy in New York, it could be great, for him at some point. And certainly, if the Mets wanted, to go in a direction of hiring a younger person, hey, that's I'm with that 100%. But like I said, if they sought me out the first time, and if they want me to continue doing what I did with these young guys, I'd be more than happy to come back and do it again. So I would say that for the people in New York, we'll certainly know by the 1st of November what's going to be happening.
Well, Tom, I hope that they decide to bring you back, and I want to thank you personally, and I don't think the people of Brooklyn would mind if I thank you for them also for the great year with the Cyclones, and I'm so grateful that you were able to take some time out and to come on the show. This is our first season, and this is going to be the last show of the first season, and we're going to come back next year. But what a way to end the first season of shows with you coming on as guest, and it was just a blast talking to you about baseball.
Good. Well, thanks, Gary. I enjoyed talking to you, and to the Brooklyn fans, thanks for your support this year. You people were awesome, and I hopefully look forward to seeing you again out at MCU Ballpark in 2015.
And I hope we can talk again in the future.
Very good. Anytime, Gary.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
Tom.
thanks. Sure.
Bye-bye
Okay,
now. And that was Tom Gamboa, the manager of the Brooklyn Cyclones. And as I said, this is the last episode of this season of Brooklyn Cyclones FeverCast, but we will be back next season. And what a great guy and a terrific guest, and hopefully he does come back, and we'll get him on the show once again, because he was fantastic. And what a great stories and what a life he's had in the game of baseball. Okay, so before we go tonight, I do want to thank some people for this season and making this season a success. Some of my guests that came on the show over the course of these 14 episodes. I want to thank John Boswell, the Lowell Spinners, Cody Crandall of the Jamestown Jammers, Matthew Collar of the Batavia Muck Dogs, Sam Siegel of the Tri-City Valley Cats, Joe Putnam of the State College Spikes, and, of course, Tom Gamboa. I also want to thank Dimitri Cristo for all his support over the course of the season, and all of the Cyclones fans that have shown a lot of support of the show. And I'd also like to thank, most importantly, Daniel Weiss for all his support and his promotion of the show and coming on the show. He's just been a great aid and a great asset, and whether he knows it or not, I stole some of his stories to put on the show. So, Daniel, a special thank you going out to you for all of your support and helping to promote the show all over the place, and I really appreciate it. And I don't think the show would have lasted that long without your help. And I also want you to remember that the show can be found on Stitcher Smart Radio, iTunes, and www.baseballtalkradio.com. And please check out these supporters of the program, Brooklyn Baseball Banter at brooklynbaseballbanter.com. And on Facebook, check out diehard Brooklyn Cyclones fans, real Brooklyn Cyclones fans, and Brooklyn Cyclones news and memes. And remember, I'll be back next season, maybe a little earlier next year, with the second season of Cyclones FeverCast. Until then, catch the fever, keep the fever. Cyclones Fever. Have a great winter, everyone, and we'll see you next season.